3, and there's a better chance you're going to get one of them done.
Okay.
Now, it's only about this much of a chance.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Natural Resources Committee. I'm Senator Bruce Bostelman from Brainerd, representing the 23rd Legislative District, and I serve as chair of the committee. Today, the committee will be hearing several gubernatorial appointments, which we will take up in the order posted. If you are testifying today, please fill out one of the green testifier sheets that are on the table at the back of the room. Be sure to print clearly and fill it out completely. When it's your turn to come forward to testify, give the testifier sheet, if we have a page, to the page, or bring it up here to the committee clerk, please. When you come up to testify, please speak clearly into the microphone. Tell us your name and spell your first and last name to ensure we get an accurate record. First, we'll begin each hearing with the appointee's opening statement, followed by any proponent, opponent, or neutral testifiers. We will be using a 3-minute light system for testifiers. When you begin your testimony, the light on the table will be green. When the yellow light comes on, you have 1 minute remaining, and when the red light indicates you need to wrap up your final thought and stop. Questions from the committee may follow. Also, committee members may come and go during the hearing. This is just part of the process, as senators may have other meetings to attend to. Just as a reminder to please silence or turn off your cell phones, and verbal outbursts or applause are not permitted in the hearing room. Such behavior may be cause for you to be asked to leave the hearing. The committee members with us today will introduce themselves, starting on my far left.
Very far left. Good morning, I'm John Frederickson. I represent District 20, which is in central West Omaha.
On my far right.
Senator Tom Brandt, District 32, Fillmore Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties.
I'm Senator Mike Jacobson. I represent District 42, which is Lincoln, Perkins, Hooker, Thomas, Logan, and McPherson County.
Senator John Kavanaugh, District 9, Midtown Omaha.
Mike Moser, I represent Platte County and most of Stanton County.
Sir Moser also serves as vice chair of this committee. Also on my right is the committee legal clerk, Cindy Lamb, and to my left is the committee clerk, committee legal counsel, Cindy Lamb, and to my far left is, or to my left is the committee clerk, Lori Wallerson. With that, we will begin our first appointment with Mr. Scott Smathers as a reappointment to the Natural Resources Commission. Mr. Smathers, good morning.
Good morning, Senator.
Welcome.
Chairman Bossman, members of the committee, I'm Scott Smathers, SCOTT-SMATHERS.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you'd like to be reappointed, please.
Well, I know most of you know me from my years of executive director of the Nebraska Sportsman Foundation. I've been involved in water in the state thanks to a former senator dragging me down this rabbit hole 15 years ago with Senator Langemeyer's LR study on water funding possibilities back in 2011 and 12. I then was selected to the Water Funding Task Force at Senator Carlson, OB 517 in 2012, and was a member of the Water Funding Task Force for that year where we established the Water Sustainability Fund. Then was appointed by Governor Heineman in 2013 to serve as a member of the Natural Resource Commission representing outdoor recreational users. Was reappointed again in 2014 by Governor Ricketts, or 2016, one of the two, and then reappointed again by Governor Ricketts. And then my appointment expired in May of this year, and was asked to serve again and reappointed by the governor at this time. So I'm 10 years in, a little longer than that. Hoping this will be my last tenure to bring in some fresh blood after this. During my time on the Natural Resource Commission, I was an initial member of the Rules Committee that established all the rules for the Water Funding Task Force, or for the Water Sustainability Fund. Then served as chairman of the Rules Committee. I've been on the Scoring Committee 5 times, chairman twice. Been vice chair, chairman of the Natural Resource Commission, and now serve in the capacity of legislative committee chair for the Natural Resource Commission. And the work I've done and been associated with my fellow members of the commission, I've enjoyed thoroughly. Brought some interesting conversations in water issues, and I'm very proud of the fact that our group has put aside stakeholder ownership and work together to achieve goals that not necessarily benefit each one of us states, an individual stakeholder group to represent, but it's a greater good for the state.
Thank you. Are there questions from committee members? Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Bosman. So you've been on this committee how many years?
Since 2000, I was on the Water Funding Task Force in 2012. and then appointed in 2013 to the Water Sustainability Fund.
So what do you feel is the most consequential thing that your committee has done in the time that you've served on it?
Unify water users in the state to find common ground for positive projects for quality and quantity in the state.
Can you give me an example?
Well, we've done, for Lincoln, we came together for water quality projects here in the city of Lincoln. We've worked on water quality for Hastings with nitrate issues with funding. We've done a large number of reservoir projects, some with containment, some with more with quality and quantity issues. I don't know the total number. I didn't look at it, Senators, what we've been involved with since the beginning, but our application processes have been anywhere from 15 applications a year. I think our high was 35 in the first or second year. And we've had 3 different directors, obviously, for natural resources. And so we've worked with that staff in the state. And I'm proud of what we've done. We've put aside stakeholder disagreements and arguments for the most part and worked together to achieve a positive spending.
All right, thank you.
Other questions, Sir Frederickson?
Thank you, Chair Boston. Thank you for being here and thank you for your extended service on the committee. I know you mentioned that you're hoping to get, this might be your last time around the merry-go-round, so to speak. What do you, how do you sort of view, and you know, one thing that I think a lot about is in terms of, you know, time on committees is the wisdom that you acquire while you're there, right? And sort of what you learn about that process. And how do you view your role, if at all, as a possible mentor to maybe new members? And, you know?
Very open to it. In fact, we recognized as a core group 6-7 years ago that a lot of us were aging out, a lot of gray beards. We needed to rebuild the bench. We needed to bring the next group of leaders in. The Water Academy has been very positive in that atmosphere. The NRDs have been very positive in that atmosphere, bringing some new talent in, help make decisions and being a mentor. We've tried that a lot with our new members of the Natural Resources Commission. Fairly successful. Some folks have as you all know, once you get involved in some things, it's not exactly what you thought it may be. It's not just 4 meetings a year, as the commission has stated. We have a lot of work in between, especially if you're a committee member. It takes a lot of time, so some people aren't adapt to that. And that's the goal for me for the next 4 years, is to find the next set of bench strengths for all of us and bring those folks in so that we know it's in good hands when we leave.
Thank you.
Senator Jacobson?
Thank you, Chairman Bostelman. Mr. Smathers, I'm just, you've been on for some time. I'm just kind of curious as to how you see your role, and how the coordination of the commission, what the interaction is with the individual NRDs, and how you see, I think there's some that look at maybe some disconnect with all the various NRDs and whether there should be better coordination. Any thoughts on that issue?
So I understand, you mean the NRDs themselves?
The NRDs, yes.
It's a large family, and I'm involved obviously in the outdoor industry. Well, until I retired a year ago, but I'm still members of boards. When you have that many diverse interests in desires, and because we're a large geographical state, sometimes not all needs are the same on the table. I can tell you that the NRD folks that I've worked with over the last 20 years are always up for the conversation of collaboration that benefits East, West, and Central. May not benefit them at the particular time, but they know those stepping stones will lead to the future. I've traveled all over the country, and the NRD system, positives and negatives, is still the best system in the country, in my opinion, because it's a focused effort.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning that. I guess I'm just really looking at, is there something more that can be done to increase efficiencies and make it work better?
That's an issue for the NRDs as far as how they work with each other. In my opinion, I think they have good leadership, but I think it's always the same, is that we've watched the political climate change a little bit over the last 5 to 10 years, obviously. I think they'll continue to work with each other. I think it's imperative for us from the Natural Resource Commission to be the leadership. We're the appointed individuals representing stakeholders outside the NRD system. So how we act is how they should act, and they'll follow, or vice versa. If we're petty and looking at simple things, then that's what they're going to do, because it's a simple road. So that's always been my focus with our groups that I represent, is that we look at the big picture. Tell our groups all the time, it's not always about us winning that day. We may win a year from now, if you will, for one county's wins and losses. But I think the coordination, and we have to have more of the cross-section of all these groups working together, is my opinion. So,
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your willingness to continue your service.
thank you, sir. Appreciate it, sir.
Would ask if anyone would like to speak as a proponent for the reappointment of Scott Smathers to the Natural Resource Commission. To please step forward. Any proponents? Anyone like to speak in opposition? Any opponents to the reappointment of Scott Smathers to the Natural Resource Commission? Anyone like to testify in the neutral capacity? Seeing none, there were no position letters received for the reappointment of Mr. Scott Smathers to the Natural Resource Commission. That will end our hearing on his reappointment. Next, we'll have the reappointment hearing for Mr. Stanley Clouse to the Natural Resource Commission. Morning and welcome.
Morning, Senators. Stan Clouse, C-L-O-U-S-E from Kearney. And the reappointment, Scott took everything. I don't know what I can tell you because we've been in lockstep. Was the appointment for the water funding task force as we work through this, and many of the same scoring committees, all those same types of things that I've been a part of over the years. My representation is as the municipal water users. And as of course, Kearney is one of our larger communities in the state. Our water sustainability is important for our communities. Some of the projects that have been referred to, small projects, small and large. In fact, we just had one a year or so ago on the small town of Sargent, and it had to do with flood control. And so instead of basing everything on the number of people and per capita, one of the comments that I actually made on the committee is, they're taxpayers too. They have the right to have access to some of this to support those small communities. We've had a lot of great projects involving the cities. Columbus, we did a flood control project there. Grand Island with the flood control. And then, of course, when you talk about water quality and groundwater sustainability, surface water sustainability, how we're doing with our recharge, it all ties into the importance for our municipal water supplies. And so we pay close attention to that. And so, again, Scott covered about everything that I would have, because we've been in lockstep on a lot of these things over the years, serving on these committees.
Okay, thank you. Questions from committee members? Senator Jacobson.
Thank you, Chairman Bostelman. Well, I just first want to just mention thank you for your service as mayor. I'm not quite sure how many years you've been mayor of Kearney now, but Kearney has certainly done well under your leadership. And I also just want to note for the committee that you were in North Platte originally, and then you ended up moving to Kearney. So that's probably where some of that wisdom started, and then you've just carried it on. So thank you for your service, and hopefully you'll be short-lived on this board and be joining us here at the legislature soon. So
Yeah, to that point, previous hearings, I grew up in Brady, which is right on the Platte River, and my dad was worked for Central Nebraska Public Power and Irrigation District. So I've been in every hydro in the state, understanding how the importance of water to generation as a long-term MPPD employee. So water is critical to our state, so it's important that we manage it and take care of it. And then it's equally important is how do we allocate, or our recommendation for allocating those funds on those scoring committees. And we try to achieve a balance so that it's not all going to one or two areas, but we're able to really support the rest of the state. So I think it's important having that breadth of an understanding of how our state is laid out, 15 inches of rain in Scottsbluff versus 50, 60 inches in southeast Nebraska. And how do you manage that? The difference between flood control and nitrates and all those things. There's a lot to go into it. And the NRDs, I agree. I have a lot of respect for the NRDs, and they all have a little different views on how they have to manage their respective areas. But I have a lot of confidence in working with the NRDs.
Senator Brandt.
Thank you, Chairman Bosselman. Thank you for your public service. We're in a special session now dealing with property tax. And when you get your tax statement in December, one of those lines on there is NRD. And do you feel, in your experience, there's room to manage the levy for the NRDs?
There's a lot of things when you look at those levies, and of course I've heard that everybody's going to have to tighten belt a little bit. To each individual NRD, they're at different rates, so it depends on what their needs are in their respective areas. When I look at the Central Platte NRD where we're at, they cover a large area, and they have a lot of different aspects that they have to cover. You know, we're looking at, if you recall, 2019, the floods that come through Kearney and the hospitality sector. So we're working with that with JEO and the Corps. And so for them to manage their dollars, I think that's always a challenge because it's so diverse on the situation they deal with. Now, I can tell you as a city of Kearney, we're going to have to really tighten our belt too. So I think everyone's going to have to take a look at what they can cut. I don't necessarily see massive areas where they can because I'm not involved in that. My position has always been I don't want to, as an elected official responsible for a city council and a city municipal government, I don't generally play in the sandbox of those other elected officials because I don't really have access to all the details that they may have and some of the challenges that they may get. But I think where we're headed with this body is we're all going to have to tighten it somehow.
All right, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing that as looking into the future, perhaps in a sense, what do you see? You're running for legislature, and if you're elected, then then your replacement on the commission. What are the things what are the attributes that you have, or that person has, that you would expect to be beneficial to the position you have right now?
Yeah, I think that representing municipal water users, I would think that they would really need to have an understanding of how municipal government works and how the water supply works and your water and sewer and all those types of things. They need to have a good understanding of that, understanding how much water to use, where do you draw your water from. We've had situations in the north central part of the state where they're bringing it in from Yankton, and there's some silting issues. So how do they meet that water supply? How do they co-op to work through that? So I think that as a municipal water user, you need to understand how are you using water? What are you doing for efficient use of water? And again, that's just on the consumption side of it. So you also have to look at the flood control because we have a lot of areas that is an issue. So I really think you need to understand the layout of your communities and all the other communities around the state. And you have to visit the state, you have to be in those communities, you have to understand where it comes from and the challenges that they face.
Separate question from that completely. One thing that we see, especially Lincoln, is looking at this expansion need for water. Has the commission seen any more activity or requests in using, gray water, recycling water, those type of things, to where those type of systems come into play?
I can't recall that we've seen anything in that regard. What we have been looking at is the minerals and how you get cleaner water. I think that's been some of the issues with the Lincoln water supply, is how do you clean it up? And then of course, when you're piping it in from around Ashland and out of the Platte River up there, the challenges of the distribution and getting it here. And so we've had some of those over the years where we've worked with the city of Lincoln, but I don't recall that we've seen anything on the reuse and recycling. Is that was your question?
Yeah, the interest I have has been over the years with this body as we see bills come through, especially for need for more water. My question always is what do you do to conserve? What do you use? Are you using your gray water? Are you using those type of things? And when we started that a few years ago, we didn't really have a lot of I didn't get a lot of positive feedback that that's really being looked at. So I was kind of curious if that's something that has started to kind of percolate a little bit within the commission, seeing that type of discussion happening, to where we see cities looking more to utilize more gray water, utilize that type of.
How do you capture it? Probably is the bigger thing. How do you capture it, and then what do you do with it when you capture it, and what's the cost of that too? That's always the other side of it. There's a cost to all those things, and I'm thinking on our water supply, we've invested, probably 30-some million in upgrading our water treatment system so that when we return it to the river, it's better quality. So we've invested a lot, I know, in Kearney, and those are not cheap, those types of systems.
Sir Mosier.
A little bit unrelated to what else we're talking about, but as long as we have you here, how does Kearney finance water production and wastewater treatment? Do you sell bonds and then pay the bonds back by water and sewer rates, or do you put sales tax money
We have,
in?
no, we have a very good bond rating because of where our levy and the way they manage our community with a low levy. And so we can go out and get some pretty good bond returns. But we are looking at it through our fees, through our rates. And we've done it in a way that it's not a single hit. We're scaling it over time so that we can get that paid. And we use the revolving fund from the state too, the low interest revolving funds. We use some of that too.
Well, one of the reasons I was asking is we've had cities, counties come in asking for money from the legislature for water treatment. And so they want people from the whole state to pay for treating water that they drink and then processing the water they use. And I know in Columbus, as you indicated, I believe you do in Kearney, we sold bonds and we adjusted our rates to pay the bonds back, and that way the people who use the water are paying to use it. So I was just curious if you had some magical wand that.
The challenge you have is looking at when you're out in the bonds on your revenue stream for your city budgets. And our revenue stream is pretty solid. It's not totally dependent on property tax. In fact, it's our third lowest revenue stream, our MPPD lease payment, which gives us very favorable bond ratings, and also the sales tax and how we leveraged the sales tax and how we work that through capital improvements. We have one portion of the sales tax that's just for capital improvements, and that was voted on by our citizens, and so that's how we do a lot of our capital projects. We also put a process in there that we never exceed 35% on the indebtedness on that fund, and so we're able to have a kind of a gap there that gives us a little more flexibility to buy equipment, to do some of the things we need to do for capital improvement. And oftentimes we'll take that money, we'll put it away if we need to do a library expansion, or we'll save for it. And then if there's federal other grant opportunities, we have our match and we do our project, and it's debt free.
What's your property tax levy in Kearney?
1.5 cents.
1.5 cents?
Our property tax? Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I thought
property
it was sales tax. Okay.
Yeah, not sales.
It's
tax.
right at 15 cents.
Still, it's
We kept it,
0.15%.
yeah, we've kept it that way since I've been on there, 20
Wow.
years.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for willing
Thank
to
you all.
come in today and continue your service. I'd like to ask if anyone would like to testify as a proponent for the reappointment of Stanley Clouse to the Natural Resource Commission. Any proponents? Anyone like to testify in opposition to the reappointment of Stanley Clouse to the Natural Resource Commission? Anyone in opposition? Any neutral testifiers? There were no position letters for the record for the reappointment of Mr. Stanley Clouse to the Natural Resource Commission. And that will close our hearing on the reappointment of Stanley Clouse. Next, we'll have the appointment hearing for Kent McNeill to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Bosselman and committee members. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Kent McNeill, spelled KENT McNeill.
Please go ahead.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate your time to learn a little bit more about me and my passion to serve in this role as Commissioner for Nebraska Game and Parks. As Senator Jacobson pointed out, there's a certain amount of knowledge that begins in North Platte, and that's where my story begins. I was born there, that's my hometown, and as a young man, I grew up very quickly learning how enjoyable the outdoors is to recreate in, from hunting and fishing to cattle ranching, the rodeo, boating and water sports all became part of my life at a very young age in places like the mud flats of McConaughey, the warm water reservoir in Sutherland for duck hunting, Lake Maloney, and many other assets, even going north to ice fish up in Merritt Reservoir and near Valentine on Pelican. So it was just a great way to grow up as a young man and young boy to learn just how valuable that access to outdoor recreation is. As I moved across the state, my family relocated to Grand Island, where I continued that passion in my middle school and high school years. Graduated high school from Grand Island, and then moved very briefly for 1 year to Chicago my freshman year in college. And I learned very quickly how loss of access to outdoor recreation affected my happiness and my life. Returned back to Omaha and wrapped up my undergrad at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And then from there, was able to take my passion for outdoor recreation and turn it into a career. I started a independent bicycle retail chain that I grew across 4 states with 6 locations over 15 years. And in that service and building that business, I gave it my time serving with nonprofit organizations and advocacy organizations that worked on advocating for and stewarding these great places and experiences that outdoor recreation can provide. When I sold that company in 2017, I was serving on the board for the International Mountain Bicycling Association, it's an organization that I currently lead. I was asked to step off the board and lead the organization forward, in which I did that in 2018. And since then, have been able to really expand my vantage point, traveling internationally and all across the country to see investments that are being made through unique models of public-private partnership into growing infrastructure and experiences and habitat and land conservation for outdoor recreation. And so I think with that experience in that lens, when I was in college, mountain biking became a sport I discovered while participating in sport clubs at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And it led me into other forms of outdoor rec than hunting and fishing and the things that I grew up in love with in North Platte. It led me to parks like Ponca State Park, Indian Cave State Park, and of course Platte River State Park that were close to me in Omaha as I went to school. And it helped me understand that access to parks and recreation are also a really important piece of that puzzle. That being said, my work at IMBA has helped me realize that growing the diversity of outdoor recreation experiences and the access to them can really contribute to our state's economy and as well as the national economy. And I look forward to bringing that experience and those skill sets to the talented team that we have within the Game and Parks Commission and the directors and staff to see how we might improve access and grow the diversity of outdoor recreation experiences across the state. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions from committee members? Sir Brand.
Thank you, Chairman Bossman. It's refreshing to have somebody that owns a bicycle company be on Game and Parks. And your key word was economic driver.
Yes.
We have beautiful parks. We have immense, vast open spaces. You start to see some of these things, the gravel grinders will have a bike ride or that. Why doesn't Nebraska have a national or international competition here using our parks and trails? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. The good news is we do have a national championship for gravel racing out in Erin, Nebraska. That happened last year. It'll happen again this year in September. As far as the parks and trails, I think that's one of the opportunities that exists before us is with what we have in land mass and infrastructure, our trail systems aren't exactly at the level that they would need to be to attract that type of event. And I think more importantly, as an economic driver, it speaks to what I was alluding to, that if we look at our parks and what's in them for outdoor rec, I think there's a great foundation to build upon to bring in more diverse outdoor recreation pursuits with infrastructure build and with experiences that can surround that infrastructure to help drive travel and tourism and economic development, especially where those parks are located across the state.
Then while I've got you, my pet project is kayak trails.
Water trails.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we just need a little bit of money to make that happen, and we can have a test site down there in southeast Nebraska. So kind of file that away and we'll talk.
All right. I look forward to talking more about that.
Other questions? So the natural gravel, I can speak from experience because my first experience was standing out in my yard at 7 o'clock in the morning and the first riders went flying by.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on? And all day long, they ran by. And they actually ran in our area, so I live up at Brainerd, and they've been in our area twice to run. And I know one individual specifically who did the long tour was, I don't know, it's 350 miles or something like that.
Yeah, they have different distances, but
It's
the ultra distances.
Quite the ride, it's
get
quite the
350.
thing, and there's a lot of riders. That does create a lot of opportunities there. One, I'm kind of curious, since you've been involved in mountain biking for a while, we have something that Game and Parks is responsible for that really belongs to the railroads, but Game and Parks is responsible for upkeep and maintenance of it, and that's called the Cowboy Trail.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any thoughts or ideas? Because right now, that really is a money drainer, I'd say, more than a money maker in a sense of paying for itself, to upkeep, maintenance. There is some economic benefit maybe to local communities. So do you have some ideas on that opportunity? It seems like it's just sitting there that we just need to have the right ideas, the right concepts to bring something together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I certainly need to level up on the details of that project. But in general, trails themselves bring a certain amount of benefit. But when you take a comprehensive of, okay, that's the infrastructure, how do we make sure that the experience models around that infrastructure drive that economic activity, and then therefore create funding to help with the maintenance and long-term stewardship of those assets. So what I would enjoy rolling my sleeves up and looking at is what are those opportunities, because people travel to outdoor recreation when the experiences are unique and they're marketed well and they understand it's more than just a trail. And I don't know to what degree we're doing that or what other additional opportunities there may be there, but it's certainly worth exploring, because the ones that figure out how to market it and create those experiences tend to more than offset the maintenance needs of the infrastructure long term.
Sure. One thing comes to mind right off is something my wife and I have been more involved with here recently is night skies photography, astrophotography, and that. You've got the skies there, you've got the place there to do that. It's to how do you attract folks that meet both of those things into that area, maybe an opportunity. Are there other things that you see maybe in other states that happens on our facilities, either our wildlife management areas or our parks, our lakes, those type of things that you see that we could bring to Nebraska, maybe they're not done currently?
Well, I think obviously the obvious one is natural surface trail-based recreation. That goes beyond mountain biking, and that leads to hiking, trail running, equestrian, motorized use as well, ATV, UTV exploration. Another unique one that I've always thought about, and I was glad you mentioned it, is we have a lot of beautiful scenic rivers and water trails, and how we develop those systems and promote those. Those are unique experiences for Nebraska that I think created could be another addition to the diversity of outdoor rec experiences we offer. And looking at, I'm also served on the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan advisory committee, looking at what both our residents want in terms of infrastructure, really lead to that type of diversity of experience in terms of what we see through the surveys. And it's just a matter of creating the infrastructure, but also creating the funding mechanisms and the public-private partnerships to stand up the economic activity around them, so that the long-term maintenance and stewardship is also considered.
Is there any, on the mountain biking side, I'm kind of curious, because we've had bills before this community about motorized bikes on trails.
Yep.
How does that tie in? Is it a certain size of motorized bicycles that's allowed or not allowed, different type of opportunities for that?
Yeah, it's a complex issue that's actually not that complex when you get into it. So there's in terms of the new technology in the e-mountain bike or the e-bike category, There's a Class 1 EMTB that is consistent with the non-motorized experience. It's only pedal assist. It doesn't throttle like a motorcycle. The assist cuts out at speeds that human power wreck normally travel at. And so that's, I find that usually completely suitable in non-motorized areas. And then all the other classes tend to be better off in motorized access areas. And there's the way that you can manage that technology so that again, it all comes back to the experiences you're creating. We want to protect the non-motorized experience as well as a motorized experience. And depending on the technology, there's a place where those are appropriate and a place where they compromise those experiences.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, committee members? No, thank you very much for your willingness to serve. Thank you for coming in today. Yes. I would ask for anyone to testify as a proponent for the any proponents? Anyone like to testify in opposition to the appointment of Kent McNeill to the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission? Anyone in opposition? Any neutral testifiers? We had one proponent position comment received by the committee. With that, we will end the hearing for the appointment of Kent McNeill to Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Thank you all for coming today. I would ask the committee to stay for an exec session. Will you clear the room, please?